to set a 2022 meeting calendar for the town clerk. Typically, most boards meet on a recurring date and time, like the first Monday or the first Wednesday of the month or the third Wednesday of the month. So we'll dial in a date and time so we can all come into agreement. So that's part of the rules of procedure. And then we have our affordable housing plan overview, which is an informational item that we'll be going over. And then we'll be discussing our affordable housing incentive zoning policy, going over an overview as a study session on that, informational study session, no action on that item. And then we want to schedule a couple special meetings regarding the incentive zoning policy because that is a high priority item for town council, and we have a tentative target date of March 31st. So that's what our agenda looks like. We'll go ahead and get started here for the time being. And Rhett, I'll help navigate you through the agenda. So, and when Bill's able to join in, he'll pick up right where you left off. So let's go ahead and go to item number 1, which is just simply a roll call. And Rhett, if you want to go down the list over here, as you see, write down this list and just do a roll call and include Town Council Killingsworth and Planning Board Sherman. And just, you guys just acknowledge if you're here or not. So go ahead, Rhett. If you want to unmute, I will mute.
Sure. Thanks, CJ. So I'll call down the list, and maybe if you can also just say who you're with, that would be helpful, just so everybody's, I think a lot of us know each other, but just in case. So I'm Rhett Fussell. I'm with the Raleigh Area Land Trust, and I'm going to be the vice chair of the committee. So I'll just go down the list. Valeria, or is it Valerie?
Hello. Well, my name is Valeria, but you can't pronounce it. So everybody calls me Val. I'm a citizen. I have been a resident of Apex for the last 17 years, and I am a family law attorney, serving mostly the Latino community in the Triangle area. And I've got quite a bit of connections to the nonprofits in the Triangle, if that makes any sense.
Cool. Thanks. Paul?
Yeah, I'm here. Paul Kane with the Home Builders Association for Raleigh and Wake County. Even though it has the name Raleigh in the name, we serve all of Wake County. I don't know if you need me to say anything else or.
That's good for now.
All right, good enough.
Thanks, Paul. Seth, you're next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Seth Friedman. I'm the CEO of Passage Home. We're Wake County's anti-poverty organization. We focus both on building affordable housing and then anti-poverty efforts like workforce development, economic mobility, and youth development.
Thanks, Seth. Jacob.
Hello, my name is Jacob Rogers. I head up the Triangle Community Coalition, and I'm also the incoming president for the Apex Chamber of Commerce.
And then Molly.
Hi, I'm Molly Rogers. I'm retired, so I'm one of those community stakeholders, but I am retired from the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. So affordable housing has been a background for a long time. So I'm glad to be here.
Awesome, thank you. And then Audra.
Hi, Audrey Killingsworth, Apex Town Council. Have been on the council since 2017, and this has been one of the things that I've talked about from pretty much the moment I started campaigning early on. So I'm excited to be here and excited to move forward with this.
Thanks. And then Tina.
Hi, Tina Sherman. I serve on the planning board.
All right, thanks everybody, and thanks for everyone for being here today. And so CJ, I'll turn it back over to you if you want to introduce the staff maybe so that everybody knows who else will be working on this project.
I'm CJ Valenzuela. I'm the new housing program manager with the town of Apex, and I'll be serving as the Housing Advisory Board non-voting secretary. And also with us today, we have Noor Sandhu, our Housing and Community Program Specialist, and she'll be assisting with providing the meeting minutes and any other staff support for the Housing Advisory Board. So thank you. And this is just simply a roll call and introductions to get the meeting started. So with that said, we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is the rules of procedure. And I'll go ahead and tackle that one for you, Rhett, since this is a staff presentation here. So, all right. So just to remind the Housing Advisory Board and those that may be streaming or watching this, that this is a relatively big board. It's a 9-member board made up of 7 voting members and 2 non-voting members. The town council appointed the members on October 26th. So this is our very first meeting. This is a brand new board. So we're excited about having this board. And as far as initial membership terms, which is very, very common, most boards start with staggering membership terms. So we have some board members that are on 3-year terms, 2-year terms, and then our 2 non-voting members are on 1-year terms. And so the terms are as follows. They started on August 26th. That's the day that town council appointed the members. So those are 1, 2, or 3-year term, and there's our chair Welch there joining us here. Chair Welch, I'll finish this up and then we'll circle back with you for a quick introduction, but we're just going over the rules of procedure here. So in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see your term based upon if you're on a 1, 2, or 3. You can serve up to a maximum of 3 terms. The powers and duties through our UDO that we did, or through our ordinance, I should say, is to recommend to the mayor and town council any policies and funding recommendations related to affordable housing, to advise the mayor, town council, and planning board on housing advocacy efforts related to affordable housing, and to assist in the creation of an annual housing annual report. So as far as the rules of procedure, these are our, the template is our town council adopted rules of procedure. We do require that all board members be sworn in, and I did get confirmation from our town clerk's office that everyone is sworn in. So I appreciate you doing that. As of right now, because of COVID, we're holding all of our meetings virtual via Microsoft Teams. For our Housing Advisory Board members and key staff are invited to an internal Microsoft Teams meeting. And then for the members of the public, they are streaming via YouTube live on the channel. But when we do, if and when, depending on COVID, what's happening with COVID, if we do meet in person, we do have a conference room that we'll be using for town hall. As far as public comments, we can receive public comments up to 24 hours before a meeting. And we have created a housing public comment email address specifically for the Housing Advisory Board. There's also instructions if someone wants to drop off their public comment at town hall or they want to mail it. We do include an address in our meeting notice as well on how they can submit it via that way. And we also include all the instructions, including how to access the meeting via YouTube in the meeting notice. So all that's covered in our meeting notice, and we work with the town clerk's office on that. Now, in order to have a meeting like today, we needed more than half of the voting members to be present, and that would be at least 4 voting members. So as far as meeting facilitation, our chair Welch, who will be taking over the meeting facilitation momentarily, and then if the chair is, like today, some technical difficulties, we have a backup plan, which was Rhett was able to step in today to help facilitate. As far as making a motion, any board member can make a motion, regardless if you're a voting or non-voting board member, anyone can make a motion. However, when voting on a motion, only voting members can vote on the motion, and there needs to be a majority for the motion to be adopted. Voting members must vote unless they're recused for something like conflict of interest, for example. So that's pretty straightforward. One of the goals of this item is to establish a regular meeting schedule. Our default meeting schedule is quarterly, so we'll go over that in a minute. As far as special meetings, those can be called on an as-needed basis, as we need to. And board member can request to staff to add an agenda item. We just ask that you do that 1 week in advance, 7 calendar days prior to the meeting, to give staff time to prepare if there's additional research, if we have to run something through, another division to get more information. So as a courtesy. As far as agenda and meeting materials, those are going to be posted a minimum of 48 hours prior to the meeting. We work with our town clerk's office on all this, pretty standard. As far as meeting minutes, well, that's Nora and I will help produce and prepare the meeting minutes. So our next upcoming meeting, you'll have a set of meeting minutes to consider and to review, just in case you might want to go back and say, oh, I forgot, what this item was or whatnot. And then all meetings are recorded. This is a live record. This is a recorded meeting that's happening. So I just wanted to share that. If we have in-person meetings, like for example, if we do meet at town hall, those will be minimally recorded audio-wise, but when we have them virtually, these are recorded video as well. So there are different type of agenda items that you guys will see that will be coming to you. We have a new business category, so we'll have a new business informational item. We have a couple of those today on the agenda. There's no voting action needed for that type of item, and there's no public comment that will be received. We have a new business action item, which is this item before you, for example. So we will need a vote, but there will be no public comment for these type of items. And then old business items are simply if we ran out of time or we needed to come back and ask staff to bring the item back at the next meeting, we can continue an item. And then the new business consideration item, once we start moving into the consideration items, does require both a vote from the Housing Advisory Board and also we must receive public comment on those. So, I just want to distinguish the different type of agenda items that you will be seeing come across the board. So the next step simply is to establish a quarterly meeting schedule, and then staff can submit that to the town's clerk office for posting on the website, and so we'll know what our posting requirements are. So, and then we'll have a recommended motion for this item. So, does anyone have any questions about the rules of procedure? Seeing none, I see a lot of, okay. Well, if nobody has any questions, I will turn it to our chair, Mr. Phil Welch, and I will ask him to do a very short introduction. I'm glad you're able to join us, and then I will turn it over to you so we can get a date here for our report.
Okay, thank you, CJ, and thank you, Rhett, for filling in. I don't know, the technical gremlins were not working in my favor. That was an exciting start for me. So if we're going back to introductions, then what I would like each person to do as I call on them is to just introduce themselves, name, organization, title, and
So
just
we've already done that, just FYI. So we just need you to tell us who you are.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm Phil Welch. I'm the chair of this august body. I also serve on the Western Region Affordable Housing Action Group and the advocacy team there. And I think I'm also on the Habitat Wake Advocacy Committee. I think that's enough for now. Okay, so we're up to determining when our quarterly regular meetings will be held. And so it looks like we're aiming for a Thursday, either a first, second, third, or fourth Thursday. And I can help move this process along by saying that I have standing commitments on Thursday afternoons from 3 o'clock to 4:30. So, but I could do Thursday, the third or fourth Thursday on, in the morning. So do we have, let's do it this way. How many people could make it on the first Thursday of April, July, and October? Is there anyone that could not make it on the first Thursday? And does it depend on, okay, I see someone has a hand up.
Thought we were raising hands to determine that.
Okay, we can do that too. Someone's jumping in here. That's good. Okay, so if you want to raise your hands to indicate, and this applies to all 9 members of the board, obviously, raise your hand to indicate if you could make the first Thursday in April, July, and October. And I have to find out where my hand raising
For me, it would depend on the time, because I do have a a commitment later in the day on April 7th.
Same here.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay. So let's do it by morning or afternoon or evening. I guess any one of those. I'm sure CJ and Nora would appreciate it being either morning or afternoon. So
Mornings are nice.
mornings are nice. They're nice for me as well.
I agree.
What
I
about?
would be concerned about public access. As much as I also would love to have a morning meeting and potentially an afternoon meeting, I would be concerned about the public access, and so I would defer to an evening meeting.
I think there are many other local governments across the triangle who have morning, afternoon, and evening regular scheduled meetings where the public, and especially on the virtual side, it's much easier to engage.
Well, let's check with CJ. CJ, do you have a problem with having an evening meeting?
Yeah, this is a working board. Typically, we strive to have them during traditional business hours. That's why staff's recommendation when we first tried to do this, our first housing advisory board was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because if the meeting runs an hour or two, we're still ending at a reasonable time around 5. I know today we're going to run over 5 just because we have a packed agenda, but this is a working board meeting, so during normal working hours is fully acceptable. It does not have to be an evening meeting.
Okay, but I guess the question I'm asking is if I think the point is a good one, that in the evening it might be easier for members of the public to attend the meeting, listen in on the meeting for the live stream as opposed to the recorded version.
And Phil, this is Audra. I still work full time, and I've got, an evening meeting would be better for me, to be honest, because I work till 5:45 on Thursday, and I have to drive 30 minutes here. So.
Okay, so that means the earliest we could start would be like 6:30, 7 o'clock? 6:30? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, well, that pretty much.
Why don't we just vote on each one, morning, afternoon, and evening, and majority rules?
Well, I think it's important to have a member, our member from the town council, be a part of this.
Well, I do too, but we're a 9-member board.
So,
and we're a 9-member board serving the public. So again, I do stress that while I understand that it is easier with virtual sometimes, typically meetings that you would like the public to have easier access to does tend to be in the evenings, or at least starting later in the afternoons. So I would err on accessibility to the public before I would err towards the majority of the board.
Okay, well, Audra, let me ask this question. If you knew ahead of time when a meeting was going to be, would it be possible for you to be available for a meeting, say at, 5 o'clock, 5 p.m.?
I think I could do 5. I don't think I could do 3 or 4.
Okay. Well, I think that would be better for CJ and the staff, and it would be better for the giving the public access, because the public often has working hours as well.
Right.
So why don't we vote on that particular proposal? I see CJ is filling that in. First Thursdays at 5 p.m. and hopefully this would be a meeting that would last no more than 2 hours, from 5 to 7. And then the question is, given the advance notice, would everyone be able to, accommodate that on their schedules?
So I would not for April. I have a commitment.
Okay.
It's been on my calendar for months.
Okay, that's fine. And I'm sorry, I was not here for the introduction, so could you just identify yourself, please?
Yes, this is Paul Kane. I'm with the Home Builders Association.
Great. Okay, thanks, Paul. Okay, so what about the second Thursday at 5 p.m.? Could we have a show of hands in terms of who would be able to make that?
Sorry, which one?
That would be the second Thursday, so that'd be April 14th at 5 p.m. in the evening.
Phil, this is Audra. I would not be able to make the first one, the April meeting, but I could make the other two.
Okay.
Same. This is Tina. Same.
Okay. And I have, well, actually, I could make a 5 p.m. meeting on the third Thursday. That would not be my choice, but actually that would work for me. So why don't we try the third Thursday? That would be the 21st.
Phil, can I suggest something? I think we're sort of jumping around, and so I don't. It doesn't mean that everybody has to be there at every meeting, right? Some people are just not gonna have it. So if the first Thursday works in April or in all the months for everybody, but in this case, Paul just can't make the first one, then I think that would be fine instead of us trying to find one that we all. It's just impossible to find that, right? I think. I don't know what others think, but that's just my suggestion because I think we're gonna struggle to try to get a date that everybody can meet all those times this year.
Okay, that I accept that, Rhett. That's fine.
Or since there's only 4 options to look from, should we look at all 4 options before we rule out the possibility of having a meeting that we can all be present at?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, it's only 4 options, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go on and say who all could be available on April 21st and, the succeeding third Thursdays at 5 p.m. Does anyone have a problem with those particular dates and times at this point? Okay. I see a hand raised by Tessa. Tessa, do you want to be recognized? I can't hear you, Tessa. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Barely.
Barely, yeah. You need to get a little closer to wherever the microphone is, I think.
Okay, what about now?
And that's good. That's better.
Okay, I'm having to kind of yell here. I'm sorry. So I just wanted to put the information out there that our Environmental Advisory Board meets every third Thursday of each month at 6 o'clock. So if there's ever a time that you guys need to partner up that could cause problems for them or drawing attention from one advisory board to another that people feel like their focus has to be split. So I just thought I'd bring that up for you guys.
Okay, well, I'm a little surprised to hear that because I thought CJ said we picked Thursday because there was no other board meeting that day, but yeah, that can be overlooked, I guess, at times.
Yeah, when we had proposed this was during normal working hours, Phil, at 2 or 3. That's why.
Okay, gotcha. All right, that's fine. All right, so do people think, well, first of all, would everyone be available for this board on the third Thursdays at 5 p.m.? Let's first determine that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, yeah, like we said, I think it's most important to have everybody on the board attend. If it conflicts with the Environmental Advisory Board, and we have to schedule a joint meeting or whatever, I think we'll just take that as it comes. That's my opinion. So let's just have a vote on the third Thursday, the 21st of April, July, and probably October as well at 5 p.m. Please raise your hand if that is good for you. Okay, my hand is raised. Okay. Okay, Audra, I see a hand raised. Rhett, I see a hand raised. Tessa, I guess that's Tessa, TS. Paul, and Jacob, you have your hand raised. And I'm not sure who MR is. Let's see.
Molly?
Rogers, that's Molly. Okay, thank you. And, okay. So it sounds like everyone, I can't see everyone's hands raised there.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't make the first one at least. Well, I have a standing meeting at 5:30 every third Thursday. But it's just, I think it's going to be impossible to get all of us on the same schedule.
Okay.
So, I mean, feel free to join, start, I can join for a half hour and then see if I can move the other meeting.
Okay, okay. Thank you for your.
CJ, there's one other thing, and I'm sorry I'm interrupting, but there's another thing. If for some reason you guys are it's still virtual, IT cannot stream 2 meetings at the same time.
That would
They
be a
just
problem.
physically can't do that. So I do need to bring that up for IT. I'm sorry, and I'm going to mute myself again.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's good to know, except it throws a little bit of a wrench into things. Well, we haven't tried the 4th Thursday yet. That would not be my preference because I have a standing meeting that I chair on those particular dates from 3 to 4:30. So
Would it help if, since the third Thursday seems to work as a day, should we try that at a different time of that day that doesn't conflict with that other group?
Well, in that case, I don't know. Maybe we can have Tessa tell us how long those environmental advisory board meetings are, but we would either have to move up again to 3 p.m., which would be difficult for Audra, or we'd have to move back to 7 p.m., which would be difficult for staff members. So
You can't do 7.
so that's the issue on the 3rd Thursday. What about the 4th Thursday? Are there conflicts that people have on the 4th Thursday at 5 p.m.?
I would miss at least 2.
Okay, and I can't tell who's speaking, but
That's Paul Kane again.
Paul, okay. You're just too busy a guy, Paul.
Well, at that time of day, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's supposed to be after working hours, but I guess working hours have shifted these days.
Yeah, we're a member organization and they have a lot of networking events late in the day. We've got award ceremonies. They all tend to happen after hours.
Okay, all right. You're not making it easy. All right, so this is the reason why we're meeting at the end of January after being appointed at the end of October, because we're all busy people and we had a heck of a time. Well, I should say CJ had a heck of a time finding a mutually convenient date for all of us. So, yeah.
Phil, does it sound like the first Thursday of the month, the least amount of people are going to be absent? Is that right?
Well, I think Paul said he had a meeting on the 1st.
I do, but I appear to be the only one.
April 7th. I think it was more maybe the 2nd Thursday that was the most available. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was there someone that had a conflict?
No, it was the first Thursday. Both Audra and I could not be there on the 2nd Thursday.
Okay, that's Tina, I presume.
Yes.
Okay.
We could look at meeting a different date of the first Thursday or the first week of the month of April. If the first Thursday works overall.
Are you saying look at a different day during the first week in April?
Yes.
There are, actually, maybe I should check with Tessa.
Why don't we stick with the first Thursday and I'll see if I can make it somehow.
Paul, are you only going the first one? It's not all the meetings, right?
It's just April. In the July and October, I'm fine.
Right. So, I mean, I think that seems logical, right? I mean, again, it's just one person off the board that can't make it. That seems like we would want to just lock that in.
Okay.
That's fine with me.
If that's okay with Paul, then let's go with the first Thursday at 5 p.m. And so that would be the 7th of April, 7th of July, and the 7th of October. Okay, if that's good, then I think we can move on. Note that, you know, this meeting will be virtual until the town hall protocol changes to allow on-site meetings at town hall, and at that point, it would be the 3rd floor training room. So I guess that's room A.
All right, so Chair Welch, I'll turn it over. So I just want to make sure Tessa doesn't have anything to add before we vote on this. Tessa, was there any last minute things?
Nope, that date works just fine.
Okay, good. I'm glad. Okay, so
yeah.
so now we're actually we're going to vote on the this motion that's up in front of us on the screen, the approval of the rules of procedure, including the quarterly regular recurring meeting dates that we just and the time that we just decided on. And it'll either be virtual or it'll be at town hall, depending on our COVID protocol. I am really hopeful that by April, we might be able to get together in person. That would be wonderful. And then we would probably, well, I guess, I have a question. If we meet in person, is it still live streamed?
It depends on the conference. It depends on the conference room technological capabilities.
That's what I thought. Okay. All right. Well, let's set that aside for now. Do I have a motion to recommend the approval of the rules of procedure?
So moved.
Okay. And who was that said that?
I did, Molly. Roger.
Molly, thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
This is Tina. Oh.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Tina. Okay. Back up just one slide again. CJ, please. Okay. So I'm just going to read the motion before we vote on it, just to make sure that everyone is clear on what we're voting on. So we're approving the rules of procedure. And by the way, CJ had the presentation. I don't know whether I caught all of it, but that's okay. My point is that what we're voting on is not CJ's presentation. It is what was attached to the email that he sent out before this meeting. Just want to make that clear. Okay. So I hope that everyone has had a chance to read through that. And it includes the regular recurring meeting dates, which would be the first Thursday at 5 p.m. in April, July, and October. So that's what we're voting on. So I would ask then CJ or Nor to do a roll call vote at this point, so we're not looking for fingers on hands raised.
And I'll just read the motion to clarify the full motion. I think that's a good idea because it's more than just the rules of procedure. So I'll just read recommend approval of the rules of procedure, including the quarterly, regular, recurring meeting dates, times, and locations as agreed upon by the Housing Advisory Board, chair to sign the rules of procedure, and the Housing Advisory Board secretary, which is myself, to submit the rules of procedure to the town clerk's office for filing and posting. So that's the actual motion. With that, I'll do a roll call vote so Nora can capture this in the meeting minute. Chair Welch?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fussell?
Yes.
Board Member Cessanelli?
Yes.
Board Member Kane?
Yes.
Board Member Friedman?
Yes.
Board Member Rogers?
Yes.
And Board Member Martha Rogers.
I know, 2 Rogers, yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, guys.
Okay, great. Thank you, CJ.
Yeah, no problem. We got that. So we'll move on to our third agenda item here, which is an informational item on our affordable housing plan. And this is an overview for information purposes. So Town Council adopted an affordable housing plan on February 1st of 2021, so almost a year to the date, which outlines the town's vision, goals. Included in that plan was a full needs assessment, along with 14 policy recommendations and an action plan detailing how soon they want those recommendations to be accomplished. So, the town also, in fiscal year 2021, adopted and created an affordable housing fund. So the town of Apex has a local affordable housing fund, which is about equivalent to a penny on the tax. And we get over $1 million a year specifically to invest and to utilize and leverage these dollars for affordable housing. And the primary purpose of this fund is to create new affordable housing units. But we've also want to diversify, and we have a rehab program, and we'll look into other home ownership and emergency rental assistance and ADU options as we go down the line later on down these recommendations. But for right now, we do have a local fund. We have a plan, which is really good because there's only a few jurisdictions that actually have a plan, and we have a fund. So we're building that foundation, as you can see. So near-term recommendations include bringing and hiring staff, and that includes myself as the new housing program manager, and also Nor, who is our housing and community program specialist. And so now we have a plan, we have a fund, and now we have some staff. You can kind of see where it's heading. And now we have a board, which is great. This is our first meeting, so we went over the rules of procedure that outlines the board's duties, and we've talked about the structure and ourselves playing the role of administrative staff and support to you guys. And then one of the items that town council wants to see how to utilize these funds is predominantly also for investing in tax credit projects. And so we have just approved our largest ever affordable housing tax credit project on January 11th with DHIC Incorporated, called Broadstone Walk, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But that's a perfect example of investing our local dollars to generate long-term affordable housing units. And that project also included permanent supportive housing units. 36 of those were permanent supportive housing. So in addition to that, we allocated our affordable housing fund. We started with $500,000 to start our very first rehab program. This is available to low-income homeowners earning up to 65% of the area median income. And we contract with Rebuilding Together of the Triangle, a local nonprofit company, to help us administer that program. And this is a grant, not a loan, to qualified households for up to $15,000 to help with energy efficiency upgrades, health and safety code corrections, ADA accessibility, roof, plumbing, electrical, foundation. So we are super excited about this program. It's called the Apex Terrace Housing Rehabilitation Program. And we have seen an uptick in applications, and we're starting to see the dollars being invested. So not only do we want to create opportunities for new construction, we also want to make sure that we take care of some of our existing homeowners out there. So and have that. So we also, the town allocated approximately $500,000 to start our very first customer assistance program. These are for households who earn equal or less than 200% of the federal poverty level. And we contract with Western Wake Crisis Ministry to help administer this program. And this provides a one-time utility credit for those that pay their utility bill to the town of Apex up to $636. So this has been a very popular program in response to the pandemic. We've seen also a lot of households and residents utilize this in Apex. One of the things we're working on right now is creating a public interface called a dashboard. And we're going to have key affordable housing information that will be available to our board, of course, but also to the public about how many units do we have, what does our portfolio look like, how many extremely low, very low, how many ownership units, how many rental units. So we're going to have GIS capability where you can hover over the property and it'll come out with different details. So Nor, I, and some other key staff are already working on that, and we'll be bringing that before you once we have a prototype. So, and then the next item that we're going to go over is our affordable housing incentive zoning policy, which is really designed to help encourage market rate developers to consider, in exchange for certain incentives, producing or offering and constructing affordable housing within market rate development. So that's something that we're going to be looking at on our next agenda item. So those are the short-term recommendations. Going to our midterm recommendations, going forward, when we look at affordable housing, we actually recently just did a site inventory analysis of some key sites in Apex. And we also considered to make sure that they're near transit. And actually on the tax credit scoring model, being close to transit is also one of the scoring criteria for tax credit projects. So we also want to take a look. We feel it's very important for households to have access to different transportation modals. And this is something that we will be looking at in the future when we're looking at affordable housing, is to link those up. And then diversity and racial equity initiatives, just continuing to further fair housing in our community. We've had some good conversations with Legal Aid of North Carolina and getting some information out to our residents as well. And then just looking at opportunities to continue to make sure that all of our residents, regardless of demographic, regardless of status or anything, have access to housing and to create and attract a diverse population. So that just kind of goes hand in hand with affordable housing. And then we can't do it on our own. You know, we have limited resources, so we need to partner with other organizations, with other governmental institutions to see how we can leverage not only financial resources, but leverage knowledge and wisdom on how we can put deals together. So that's a partnership. One example of a partnership that we do have, we have a ongoing cooperation agreement with Wake County. The town of Apex currently is a non-entitlement jurisdiction for CDBG, home, or ESG funding, but Wake County receives all those funding sources. And so we have a CDBG partnership with them, and all the jurisdiction icons or symbols that you see also are in that partnership, where we have access to CDBG money for certain eligible project activities. So, so we've gotten about 10.5 million to date through that agreement. And if you spread it out over the life of the agreement, it comes out to about $400,000 a year. So just wanted to share that with you. And that's an example of partnering and having you know, an agreement in place where we don't currently have access to that fund directly. And then town council wants us to look at down payment assistance and homeownership counseling as well as we move forward down the line to create additional homeownership opportunities for our residents. The soft density by zoning, we're looking at the current affordable housing incentive zoning policy, but then we also should be looking at other ways where we can encourage maybe some higher density product that can fit in the mold of having a greater opportunity to offer different prototypes like attached townhomes, duplexes, triplex, or quadplex to have you know, greater opportunity to produce affordable housing. And then surveying our land, you know, what land do we own? What can be utilized, you know, to either acquire or dispose and work with maybe a developer on a potential site for housing, for affordable housing. So we are looking at this, taking a look at some sites. You know, with our ARPA funding, we recently got an allocation of federal American Rescue Plan Act funding. So we're seeing, is there an opportunity to use that one-time funding through ARPA to possibly acquire a site for future affordable housing? So that's an example of what we're trying to do. And then long-term recommendations, we're looking at accessory dwelling units or ADUs as another way when land is tight and you can, you know, if we can use an existing parcel, if the zoning allows it, there's an opportunity to build a secondary unit for affordable housing, and that's one thing we'll be looking at as well. And I know Wake County is also working on trying to create some standards and architectural standards as well to streamline and encourage more ADUs or accessory apartments as well that could be interchanged. You can interchange that name to create more affordable housing units. So. And then making sure we also help out the renter households and taking a look at looking at emergency rental assistance and supportive services, which would include full wraparound services, not just direct housing subsidy, but making sure that they have access to mental and medical and other services that they need to sustain, not just the housing payment, but to sustain them as a whole. We call that whole person care, basically. That's a term that's been used out there. So what do we have right now in Apex? Right now we have a small subdivision with Habitat for Humanity that is called Casena Lane. This is a 9-unit subdivision of detached single-family homes that are available to first-time homebuyers who are earning up to 70% of the area median income. So we're super excited about this project. It's under construction. It's underway. And then also recently on January 11th, Town Council fully approved all the funding for our largest affordable housing project, which is called Broadstone Walk with DHIC Incorporated. And that's a 164-unit affordable housing rental development, which will include 36 permanent supportive housing units available to those that earn between 40 and 60% of the area median income. So there's 32 one-bedroom units, 100 two-bedroom, and 32 three-bedroom units. And you can see in the column that says monthly affordable gross rents, you can see they're well below what the average market rate rent is. So it's truly producing affordable housing, or going to be producing affordable housing. And these will be units that are restricted for a minimum affordability period of 30 years. So these are long-term restricted units. This is our first tax credit project in Apex since 1999 in 23 years, and it's also our largest. So we are excited that the funding is there, and we got it done. So how are we doing to date? So we talked about some of these goals. So as far as town staff capacity, I was hired recently, just hit my 6-month mark on July 26th, and more was hired on August 2nd. So our staff is very new to Apex. We're just about 6 months old to Apex. So, but since we've come on board, we've been able to, get the Housing Advisory Board up and running, and here we are, right? So that took us about three months to get everything to town council and get the board members approved since we joined. And that was, town council wanted to see that, that's a near-term recommendation. So staff was able to get it done on our end in 3 months. And then owner-occupied rehab, we really revamped the program. We have a English and Spanish full-out bilingual application, flyers. We have an online application now. We did marketing through our utility bill inserts. So every Apex resident that pays, to an Apex bill, electricity, got a notification about this program. We've done a lot of public outreach at Peak Fest and some other things to get this program really up and running. So we're super excited about the rehab program. And then for tax credits, well, within 5 months of our staff joining, we were able to help get the Broadstone Walk project approved. Town council approved that on January 11th, the remaining funding. And like I said, that's our first tax credit project in 23 years and our largest in history. And then as far as affordable housing incentive zoning policy, that is another near-term recommendation that the town council wants to see, and that's pending. We're in motion now. That's the next agenda item. We're going to start that. So, and then the housing dashboard, staff is already working on a database and a design layout for that public interface tool that we talked about. So we've been busy in the first 6 months. It's been very busy. So there's no action on this item. It was straight informational. And I'll turn it back over to Chair Welch if there's any questions or comments on this item.
Okay, thank you, CJ, very much. I guess one question I would have is, as the dashboard is being put together, would there be any opportunity for members of the Housing Advisory Board like myself to kind of get periodic reports and be able to provide some input?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Once we have a prototype running, we'll have a kind of like a, not a live version, but kind of like a training version that we could hopefully bring to the before the Housing Advisory Board once we have that ready to go. But absolutely, we'll be running that through you, through the board.
Okay, okay, very good. Any other questions? I'm going to see if I can expedite this by going through the list here. Audra, do you have any questions?
Not right now. It's a lot of information. I appreciate the that informational put together by CJ and staff. But yeah, no specific questions right this minute.
Okay, all right. Tina, how about you?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Rhett, do you have any questions? No.
Nope.
Okay. Valeria, do you have any questions?
Want to have the first question. I just wanted to know who are the nonprofit partners that you're working with or planning to work on, or whether you are. I wanted to ask, maybe you're not yet identified the nonprofits that are going to get the word out to the community. I'm just specifically thinking about Latino community because I've got some relationship with those nonprofits. I just kind of wanted to know they're identified. If you need help with that, what's the status of that?
Yeah.
Mute myself.
Staff is always looking for additional resources to get out in the community. So one of our
CJ, I'm having trouble hearing you. Maybe you need to get a little closer to the mic. It's kind of faint.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, I got nods that everybody can hear me. So so we have a list. Staff has formed a list of some organizations that we are already starting to work with. But we are open to, obviously if you have additional resources, send them our way, because any future affordable housing opportunity, we want to do our best to notify our residents of those opportunities in the community. And for example, with the Broadstone Walk project, what we were able to work with DHIC on is what we call an advanced marketing notification, where our Apex residents will actually be notified first before it's open to the public, as far as opportunities for, about the development, information about the development, about interest list, waiting list, application process. So, and so that's one example of partnering DHIC itself, and Habitat for Humanity on the Cassandra Lane project. That's why we really worked hard to get that utility bill insert in there. And we work with their marketing department, and we have a communications department here. We joint marketed that together, and that was an example of a partnership working with a nonprofit and Habitat for Humanity to get that word out about that project. But certainly, if you have additional contacts, you can send them our way.
Okay, well, I guess one thing to consider as part of that would be maybe having somewhere a list of the partners that you're currently working with, and that way, if there are additional ones that people have knowledge of, that they could get in touch and maybe suggest those as well. That there needs to be some place where we could go and see which partners are active at the moment.
Yeah, and we also are, the Western Regional Action Group that Phil's on as well. We also work with them and informing them consistently on what our efforts are here in Apex about affordable housing. And that's another example of a partnership. But Phil, yeah, Nora and I are working on a resource guide, which will include that. So once we have that, we can share that with you in the board.
That would be great. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to continue on. Paul Kane, do you have any questions after the CJ's presentation?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Seth Friedman?
No questions.
Okay. Jacob Rogers?
I'm good.
Okay. Molly Rogers?
No questions.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, I think we're good to move ahead to the next item on the agenda, which is the affordable housing incentive zoning policy overview, which goes with I think it's about a 25-page document that CJ sent out about a week ago. So I'm going to turn it over to you, CJ.
Okay, thank you, Chair Welch. So this is another informational item. There's no action on this item as well. So this is just a staff presentation. Affordable housing incentive zoning policy. The proposed timeline is, well, as we know, we didn't have any housing advisory board meetings, November, December. So here we are, our first regular meeting on January 28th. Staff is proposing to request to the Housing Advisory Board for 2 special meetings, one in February and March, to make sure that we, are able to try and meet our town council target deadline of March 31st. So that's our goal. So the affordable housing plan was part of, there was a near-term recommendation for the affordable housing incentive zoning policy within the affordable housing plan, as we had just went through. So this is a list. It's broken up in 3 slides of every jurisdiction in Wake County that either has an affordable housing plan or a dedicated affordable housing incentive zoning policy. So you can see here in Apex, we adopted an affordable housing plan last year. Town of Cary most recently on November 9th. And then on the other column, the affordable housing incentive zoning policy, you'll notice that no other jurisdictions within Wake County currently have a dedicated affordable housing incentive zoning policy. So we will probably be one of the first movers on this. So it's, and I'm just going to let you guys take a moment to take a look at the other jurisdictions real quick. Going back to affordable housing plans, Morrisville has one, Raleigh has one, and then Wake County has one. So there's 5 jurisdictions that have an affordable housing plan, but no affordable housing incentive zoning policy currently. So, all right, so there's different type of policies that local jurisdictions can implement. Number one is obviously a voluntary policy, which means the developer is asking for no additional conditions. Conditional is what we're proposing. This will be done through a rezoning condition, and going through a rezoning and planned unit development approval process through a rezoning application, and there will be a specific affordable housing condition as part of their rezoning process. But it is not a mandatory policy. So I just want to point that out. This is not like Chapel Hill or Town of Davidson. So this is we are not mandating anything here. It's a conditional policy. So what did we have in the past? Well, we know we didn't have a policy. We had no set policy, no set goals, definitions, process flow, or applicability standards for applicants or town staff to really work with. And we've had an insufficient number of affordable housing units in the past. And also what some applicants have proposed to try to satisfy their affordable housing condition was a financial contribution on average of about $215 per unit per lot. And it was really unclear how that dollar amount was actually derived. No one actually showed us the math, or there was no pro forma. And that dollar amount was insufficient to produce new affordable housing units. So here's what's been going on. Rezoning applications in our pipeline since from 2018 to 2021, we have 4,312 units worth of applications that either town council is either approved or proposed in our pipeline. And out of those 4,312 development units, 4,272 are market and 40 are affordable. So we're getting less than 1% of our rezoning applications is affordable. 99.07 is market rate. So you can see there's an unbalanced scale to a degree through that analysis. So what are we proposing now? We're proposing an actual policy that has clear goals, a clear process flow, definitions, applicability standards, and minimum policy recommendations. We've drafted 2 manuals, procedures manual that details the goals, the process flow, the definitions and standards and recommendations, and then the administration manual that will detail the definitions, monitoring, compliance, and administration standards for when policy units are actually generated. So there's definitely more clarity that should be for staff and developers. So as far as goals, why an incentive zoning policy? Number one is we want to provide a clear process and understanding of the town's minimum recommendations and applicability standards for both staff and prospective applicants who may consider utilizing this policy. We want to add residential affordable housing units or lots to the town's affordable housing portfolio. And we want to offset potential market rate development revenue loss for constructing newly created residential affordable units or lots through the use of zoning-based, non-financial, and financial incentives. So 3 different types of incentives that the town would be offering through this policy. As far as applicability and process flow, this would be available to developments that are residential and mixed use that have been identified in our UDO zoning districts as residential or mixed use. This would be done through a rezoning and plan unit development approval process. We have outlined a process flow now for the rezoning application process. So applicants will now have an opportunity after they apply. We'll set up a pre-application meeting with our technical review committee, which are key town staff that can help understand what the proposal is from the applicant. And then there'll be a separate housing meeting with our town housing staff to go over the specifics of the proposed affordable housing component of the project. And then there'll be enough information between the manuals and after meeting with staff and our TRC for the applicant to draft an affordable housing proposal, a marketing plan, and if it's a rental project, also a property management plan that will detail what they're proposing in that development to make it clear to produce a zoning condition that will be included and taken before planning board and town council. And then once, if that gets approved, then there will actually be an affordable housing restrictive covenant that gets recorded to memorialize the zoning condition. So there's a clear process now, at least a proposed process that is in place that we did not have before. So what is staff proposing here? So we're proposing that developments 20 units or greater, or 20 lots or greater, produce a minimum of 5% as affordable housing to these different income categories. So we have our standard income categories for rental at 30% AMI, 50% AMI, and 60% AMI, which are the vanilla HUD versions of affordable housing on rental, right? 30, 50, and 60. We're all familiar with those, but those are not reflective of our town of Apex costs. We're in a high cost area, so we're actually proposing a higher tier called 70% AMI for rental. On the ownership side, you have your very vanilla 80% low income. We're proposing median and something called workforce income. So we really designed and customized income limits based upon actual empirical data that we have on both the rental and the ownership as well. So the minimum affordability term we're proposing is 20 years. And on the ownership initial sales price, we are proposing that the affordable initial sales price be at least 10% below the market rate initial sales price. If an applicant comes in and says, hey, we'll give you below market rate housing, our market rate 2-bedroom condo is going to sell for $450. We'll give you 5% affordable at $445, $5,000 under. So there's not enough gap between the affordable price and the market rate price. So with the 10% rule, if that developer is coming in and offering a 2-bedroom affordable ownership unit at $400,000, then the minimum affordable sales price would be $360, would be $40,000 under that to justify a 20-year resale restriction agreement, for example. So if the applicant was proposing to satisfy their 5% through Habitat for Humanity or Community Land Trust, that does not apply to that because Habitat's already producing something, for example, at the 80% level, for example. So there will be no 10% differential needed through a partnership such as Habitat, for example. So I just want to clarify that. So these are the proposed income categories that would be available to applicants who are applying for zoning-based and non-financial incentives. So we're going to go over the proposed incentives that the town will be offering. So you have your extremely low income at 30%, up to 30% AMI, your very low income at up to 50%. Then you have your standard up to 60% for rental that you guys are all familiar with probably. And then you have the tier 2, which is up to 70% on rental. And then ownership at 80, 100, which is called median income, and then workforce income at up to 110%. So those are your full menu of income ranges that would be eligible to those applicants who are applying for a zoning-based incentive or a non-financial incentive. And I'm going to make that distinguish in a little bit here. These are the proposed zoning-based and non-financial incentives that we're proposing. Number one is a higher density zoning district. So if an applicant is basically stuck in a zoning district, like let's say rural residential or medium density, and let's just say, for example, the maximum allowable units they can do in those zoning districts is maybe, let's say they can only do 50 units with that parcel. But if they go through a rezoning process and go maybe from medium density to planned unit development, maybe they can go from 50 units to 200 units. So they gained 150 units. That is a higher density zoning district example. And that is one of the bread and butter incentives that the applicant could obtain, is getting rezoned, upzoned basically, to a higher density. Right now, we're looking at density bonus. That's under review for consideration. So we're working with our legal department on that, and also to see what we can do, and hopefully maybe be able to come and offer something. How a density bonus works is an applicant would be allowed to construct or be allowed to build more units than otherwise would have been required for offering a certain percentage of affordable housing. So if an applicant came in and said, hey, you know, I can do 100 units in my project, and if I do 5% affordable, maybe they get a 10% density bonus. So now they can do 110 units versus 100 units, for example. So, and then development standards. These ones are pretty straightforward. You have your building height, increased building height. This actually just came into play for villages at Apex. On November 23rd, that council approved our very first project where we actually got affordable units in the market rate project. They asked for an additional floor. It was a mixed use project. So that was an example of a height increase to get an additional floor in a mixed use development. Reduced building setbacks, reduced lot widths. These are pretty straightforward. All, you know, enabling possibly a developer or applicant to get more units in the project. And then looking at resource conservation area reduction for a maximum of up to 10%. Looking at parking reductions, developments must be in a pedestrian-oriented mixed use and or within a quarter mile of an existing or planned bus stop. Transportation, under certain conditions, the town may waive a requirement to construct sidewalks on both sides of the residential streets, where sidewalks must be provided on at least one side of the residential street. And then expedited processing, the town could consider expediting the processing of rezoning site plan and master subdivision plan applications, where at least 50% of the units are set aside for affordable housing. So I'm just going to go back, and so I could replay these for you. These are called zoning-based and non-financial incentives. So higher density zoning district, density bonus is under review for consideration. And then we have your building height, increasing your maximum building height, reducing your building setbacks, reducing the lot widths, reducing the RCA, resource conservation area, parking reductions, transportation when it comes to sidewalks under certain conditions, and then the expedited processing. So those are the 9 incentives that fall within a zoning-based or a non-financial incentive. So if the applicant is proposing to request a financial incentive from the town of Apex, then these are the AMI percentage income limits that may be eligible. And they get greatly reduced because of North Carolina general statutes. So this is the financial incentives. It could be a loan or a grant or a fee reimbursement. So the town may consider reimbursing or granting certain development fees. They may provide a loan or grant to create a greater percentage of affordable units or lots to increase the length of affordability. period, or provide deeper affordability in some of those lower AMI percentage categories. But this is subject to North Carolina general statutes and also subject to town funding availability, depending on the level of funding we have in our local affordable housing fund, if that is the proposed funding source that the grant or loan or incentive is going to be proposed to come from. So in North Carolina general statutes, 157.3, if the town chooses to provide financial assistance, at least 20% of the total housing units within an ownership or rental development must be set aside as affordable housing to low-income households earning no more than 60%. So if we put 1 penny or $1 or $100,000 in a project, in a market rate project, then 20% of those units must be at the 60% AMI level, whether it be ownership or rental. In addition, the general statute goes on for ownership developments. Once the first 20% set aside has been met at the 60% AMI, then additional affordable units can be at the 80% AMI. So once you go over the 20% threshold. So if a developer was asking the town for a financial contribution and proposing 30% of the units as affordable, 20% would have to be at the 60% AMI, and the other 10%, for example, could be up at the 80% AMI. Furthermore, the general statute says any and all financial assistance provided by the town must be shown to flow directly to the low and moderate income person and not diverted for other uses. So, for example, if $10,000 in financial assistance is provided by the town, then the entire amount must flow directly to the low and moderate income person to offset their housing costs, not the applicant, and not to any market rate units that might accompany the income restricted units. Furthermore, in North Carolina law, this is pertaining specifically to multifamily rental housing projects. The same rule applies if the town provides financial assistance, the 20% at 60% AMI, the same standard applies, okay? And then it goes one step further on the rental side. It says that 20% of those 60% AMI units must be restricted for at least 15 years after the initial date on which at least 50% of the units in the project are occupied. So once you've leased up 50% of your rental units, then the 15-year affordability restriction period kicks in for 20%, a minimum of 20% of those 60% AMI units. And then the same thing applies that any financial assistance must flow directly to low and moderate income persons, just like the other general statute says. So if someone is applying for financial assistance from the town through an incentive, these kick in, is what I'm saying. That's why those AMI percentages really go down and really get vanilla out of it. And it no longer looks like Baskin-Robbins like this over here. So I just wanted to distinguish that. And basically how it works is basically the developer will request, for example, let's say they request a $20,000 reimbursement or grant for sewer, water, capital, recreation fees. They could request $100,000. The dollar amount doesn't matter. They could request a penny, and those general statutes kick in. But let's just say in this example, they requested $20,000 for reimbursement or grant of those fees, sewer, water, recreation. Once the developer pays those fees up front, and then the town would reimburse the developer, right, for the $20,000. That's when the subsidy enters the project, and then it's the developer's obligation to either show that they've reduced the rent price or the sales price for at least $20,000 directly to that lower moderate income household. So that's how you flow in a financial incentive into a project, and then that's the obligation side that the North Carolina general statute was actually talking about. So on how you could satisfy that, because it says here that the town must be shown, the financial assistance provided by the town must be shown to flow directly to the low income and moderate income household. So this is when the developer is offering below market rate rent or sales prices, then that is directly being into the low and moderate income household. So that's the way it can get done, basically. So So why these AMI income levels? Let's take a look here. So staff has built a calculator. Let's take a look. A couple pro forma calculators that we want to show with the Housing Advisory Board. So this one's a rent pro forma calculator. So what you're going to see here in orange, let me just go ahead and highlight this for you guys. So let's give it a color. Well, it doesn't matter on the color, but what you're seeing here is the maximum rent that a private market landlord can charge to an affordable housing household based on these AMI percentages. So for example, if the developer was going to propose a one-bedroom product, right, and satisfy their 5% by saying, I will provide 5 one-bedroom units in my development as affordable housing, but to what income group, right? We don't know that yet. So this column here, you can plug and play. Let's just say that the market rate rent right now for a one-bedroom in Apex is $15.92. That's what an average one-bedroom apartment will go for right now. So let's just say that the applicant says, hey, I got some one-bedroom product. My market rate rents are $1,400, for example. That means this column right here shows that if we were asking that developer to provide a unit for extremely low income, that developer is taking an $862 a month hit for every extremely low income unit that they're providing. If they're going to provide some units at 50%, the most they can charge is $897 for the affordable rent. Their market rate's $1,400, so they're taking a $500 hit, $300 for the next category, and so on. You can go all the way down to what a housing choice voucher will pay for that unit. So as you take a look at this pro forma calculator, for example, right? And you're asking, let's say 5%. If you wanted all 5% of your units at extremely low income, and that developer is taking an $862 hit per unit per month, over 20 years, that developer is going to take $1 million hit in their pro forma, for example. But if you produced all 5% at 70% AMI, then that developer would be taking $172,800 hit, for example. So let's just say that I wanted one of those 5 units to be extremely low. I want one very low. Let's get 260 and 170% AMI. So that's a $500,000 revenue loss, right? So then when you come over here, then you take a look at the incentives that you offer that developer, right? So now maybe they got to rezone their property. Maybe they went from medium density all the way up to planned unit development. Maybe they got some building height. Maybe they got some financial assistance. So once you start adding up all their, this is how you can show, what the net loss is going to be basically, and this is on the rental side, for example. On the ownership side, and I just want to show you that when you ask developers sometimes to produce housing at the lower AMI percentages, it really does, sometimes it makes it harder to pencil out. So these are the AMI limits here for maximum affordable sales prices at 70%, at 80%, 100%, and 110%, okay? So for example, if a developer was going to offer 5% on the ownership proposal and their market rate product was priced at $500,000, these are the maximum sales prices that you can sell those affordable units at, for example. And these are the dollar difference per unit. So I'm just showing you. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation here. So what's going on in Apex right now? So prices have increased, sales prices have increased, rental prices have increased, construction costs has gone up, labor material costs, so on and so forth. Pretty much going on throughout the entire triangle. These are the income limits that HUD publishes, 30, 50, 60, and 80. These are the income limits that we're proposing, 30, 50, and 60 for the low, up to 70 on rental to help toward more middle income housing, And then the 80% for low, and then the 100 and 110% for middle income. These are what the actual income limits look like based on the current income limits that are published to those respective income categories. So you can see if I am a household in the extremely low income bracket, if I'm a household size of 2, then the maximum that we can make in the household, or I can make in the household, is $23,000. If I'm a 50% AMI household and I'm a household size of 3, the most I can make is $43,100, and so on and so forth as you go down that table. I'll give you a minute just to look at those numbers, and also those that are watching. There's a lot of numbers there. If I'm a 80% AMI household and I'm a household size of 1, then the most I can make is $53,600, for example. So what do individuals make in the community? Staff gets calls almost daily. So a police officer's average salary is $68,685, would be at 110% of AMI. Town of Apex employee, environmental specialist, you're looking at 110, firefighter at 100, teachers 70-ish, so on and so forth. So I'm just going to give you a second to take a look at that. Next, we got nurse. We put some more Town of Apex staff on there as well that you can take a look. We've studied a lot of jobs. These are just 30 more common, so on and so forth. So you see a gamut of ranges that residents are earning. The other thing too is we also have dual income households that call us that says, hey, I'm a school teacher, but so is my husband or wife, and we're making, $90,000 between us. Well, take a look at that. Where do we put them? If the highest product what do we do? Where do we put folks like that? What do we do with the firefighter or the Town of Apex environmental specialist making $72,000? We're barely still touching that 110% AMI category, for example. So what staff has proposed is just to try to expand the amount of ranges that could be available for our residents, and I sent you guys a public comment. I think we just got yesterday or the day before about someone also asking about teacher, firefighter, police, so on and so forth. So these are the average market rate rents in Apex based on the different prototypes that you see. I'll give you guys a minute to just take a look at that. We are not reflective of Wake County's market. We are a higher cost market. Us, Cary, and even Holly Springs on the sales price side is pretty high. So,
Chris, will you be able to email?
These are the market rate sales prices based on some recent data that staff came up with. You can see that the current median sales price is about $507. Average sales price for a new construction townhome condo, $424. Average sales price new construction single family about $38. So the next steps here is town council would like a set of policy recommendations to them by March 31st. So therefore, staff has just used today as an informational session, but we are requesting 2 more special meetings so we could hopefully try to carve out a policy for town council. Once again, this is not an action item. This is strictly just information only, and just like our last item. So that concludes the presentation.
CJ, this is Audra. Would you mind emailing us this presentation? This was a good presentation.
Sure, no problem. Yeah.
I didn't hear that response, but I'm assuming that you said you could.
Yes. If you can hear me now, I said yes, I would definitely do that.
Okay, good. Yeah. I think there was another question that came up towards the end of your presentation. I couldn't identify who the voice was, but would that satisfy your request as well?
Yeah, this is Seth Friedman from Passage Home. I was going to request the same thing. It seemed like a really good document with a lot of great information, but hard to kind of capture it all quickly.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of stuff there. Good stuff. Any other questions or discussion with the understanding that this is just the first pass through this. We will be setting up special meetings with this specific item on the agenda to go over this in more detail and pull it apart and talk about it and refine it and so forth. But it would be good feedback for CJ and Nor to hear what comments and questions you might have at this point. Paul Kane has his hand up. Paul?
Thank you. So I was trying to understand at the very beginning of the presentation, talking about that there are that this is it's not mandatory, it's not voluntary, it's conditional. And then the condition is that you're seeking rezoning. So does that mean that if you are seeking rezoning for a project, this would be required?
No, this is not a requirement. No, this is just this would just be a minimum town policy recommendation level. This would not be a requirement to produce 5% affordable housing, for example. So it's not a requirement.
So what does requesting a rezoning, how does that relate to this?
Through the rezoning application process, Paul, as you know, there's going to be, the applicant's going to go through a process where they're going to have to submit, obviously, an application to town, right, to the town on why they're proposing to rezone, correct?
Right.
That we talked about, maybe they're stuck in like a rural residential zoning or medium density zoning, but they need more units. So they're going to try to go maybe from a medium density to a PUD, for example, to a planned unit development, and maybe want to include some different prototypes, like some maybe the zoning that they're in only allows for single family residence, but they're like, hey, our project, we have a vision of doing townhomes, rental apartments, a blend of prototypes. And so when they go through that rezoning application process, the applicant is requesting something from the town, right? Whether it be a zoning change, lot width, something, reduced setbacks, maybe an extra floor, extra height. So basically what has been taking place is, this is not a requirement, like you were mentioning, but this is the affordable housing component is a priority of town council. So in what we've been seeing developers propose in the past to quote unquote try and throw an affordable housing caveat in their proposal is $215 per unit per lot. They've been doing a contribution. It's not a fee, right? Because we're not requiring anything, right? It's just that they have been donating to our affordable housing fund a level of contribution in that realm. And so what town council is asking is to see if a developer would consider proposing some affordable housing in the project through as part of the rezoning and plan unit development process, in exchange for these type of incentives to help offset some of that potential revenue loss. So it's not a requirement, it's going to be an ask, basically, a recommendation.
Okay. Also, in terms of the various incentives that are being recommended, I would be glad to offer up, I have access to all the residential developers and builders in Wake County, or at least most all of them. Maybe do like a survey among them and see if these are actually as enticing as we hope they are. If it's going to be an incentive, then it needs to incentivize. And where the rubber meets the road will tell us whether or not these really are going to work. So I would be glad to offer up to survey the members to see what their feedback on that is, to see how successful this could be.
So I think that, CJ, if I can jump in here, I think that would be good information. What I would ask, Paul, is that you to consider that you would ask them also, what are the kinds of rezoning options that would be, that they would be asking for? Would they be asking for, additional units per, per acre or per lot or whatever? What, in other words, to balance out, the incentives, it's like, well, so what are we incenting here? I think it would be good to get both parts of that equation.
Yeah, and also, Paul, we have invited some market rate developers who are probably on this call, and also some of some consulting firms who represent the developers through the rezoning application process. But I like what you would propose, because we do want to get this in front of the market rate development community, because that is the driving force of of what's going on in the economy. So,
well, and I wanted to thank you for those pro formas that you offered up and kind of showed some examples of the real financial loss that can happen when you're offering up below market. Because obviously if the economics of it don't match up, it'll be difficult to find incentives that are adequately incentivizing.
Okay, I saw a couple of other hands. Tina had her hand up. I see that Jacob has his hand up. So if it's okay, I'm going to move on to Tina and see what comments and questions that she might have. Tina?
Thank you. As we talk with some of the market rate developers, I think it's important also to engage many stakeholders in this conversation. And I think staff would probably be the most aware. I'm not sure who that would look like, but I would want to make sure that whoever we engage in that conversation, to make sure that this is properly incentivizing. I want to make sure that we just engage all stakeholders as a part of that conversation, and not just market rate developers.
Okay, thank you. And Jacob is next, and then I'm going to go to Valeria or Val. Jacob?
Hey there. I don't know who else would take advantage of this incentive program unless it was market rate developers. But Paul makes a good point. I actually didn't think about, his idea of polling his membership. I would love to do the same. We have multifamily developers, single family developers, as well as membership of ours. But I was on the Wake County Affordable Housing Steering Committee that determined their plan back in 2016, 2017, which Apex has adopted a lot of the things that came from that plan. But one of the things that we kept talking about, and I want to just kind of give kudos to you guys on this, is the number 9 incentive about expediting process. I've always said that, I remember talking about this at the Wake County Committee, is like, I don't understand how we couldn't just take some of these, especially like DHIC or Habitat, completely out of the normal process and fast track that, if that is the true goal, or the if we want to get these units on the ground faster. I think that's a great way of doing it. But I would also like to offer up same as Paul did, to send some kind of poll, and I can do that pretty quickly. I'm sure he can too, and turn it around. Because again, not to just keep talking, but incentives are only good if they actually incentivize. So I want to make sure that it works for everybody. Thank you for your time.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jacob and Val. I see a couple hands are raised, but we'll go to Val, and we'll get to others after that.
And keeping with thinking about the public that we were trying to serve, I wonder how the resulting housing, let's say we do come up with a series of incentives that are successful and incentivizes the builders and everybody else, how does the resulting product compare to what other counties, other municipalities are offering? In the beginning, you were to add to the final, population that we're trying to serve. You did say that Apex is not attracting as much diverse home buyers or residents as the rest of Wake County and the surrounding areas. Does it put us in a competitive position in the final product? Like, other incentives. You're talking about reduction in price, reduction in rent. Okay, I understand we're trying to, maximize the economic equations for the builders, but at the end of the day, is it worth it? Like, how is it looking at the final product and the final end? And I'm taking off my microphone.
Okay, thanks, Val. I think Audra was next with a hand up.
Yes, thank you. I do think that, having the input, like Mr. Kane was talking about, Mr. Rogers, of the builders and developers in the area is going to be valuable here. So having you guys poll your membership, I think, that's the next, that's going to be extremely valuable when we decide on the final incentive zoning, because, like you said, if it's not really going to incentivize, then what are we doing? We want to make sure that this actually works. So, and that's I think that's the goal of this housing advisory board, is to make sure whatever we do is actually working, that it's doing what it's supposed to. And I think it's an opportunity to create some pretty good partnerships here. Both in the nonprofit and market rate developers and builders. So, yeah, I appreciate that step forward in offering that from your membership as well.
Okay, thanks, Audra. Rhett, you had your hand up at one point.
Yes, I have a couple of comments. One, I want to acknowledge, Jacob mentioned the incentive. I think it was number 9, right, where it's a speed up of the process, review process. And I can tell you that I think that's what most, not just market rate, but nonprofits as well, will tell you that is probably one of the most important, because 1, time is money, and 2, it just is such a laborious process that it can be painful. So I know that we are going to be doing that with the city of Raleigh on this lot we have downtown. So I think that's one of the big discussions that we will come up with in our, sort of special meetings. So then that takes me to the special meetings, because knowing that Jacob and Paul are going to sort of query their folks about what that means, I'm wondering how that affects the timeline, knowing I think that the council wanted some report in, did I note, was March maybe?
Yeah, I think it was the end of March 31st. Yeah, CJ just put it up there.
So I'm just raising that concern that maybe this is something that Paul and Jacob can turn around like within a week, but I mean, maybe not, right? I would think that might be fast, which then, of course, sort of affects our other meetings. So I just wanted to bring that up because, there's really no need for us to have additional conversations if we're not going to wait on that input, I guess, to have some of these conversations.
Well, maybe, Rhett, maybe if I could interject it, and maybe we should ask CJ if that input was available for the March meeting before, the end of March deadline. Would that be time enough to incorporate that information, or would it be needed, for next month's meeting, special meeting? CJ, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, and I do want to say the original target deadline of March 31st, that was set a while back. We didn't know, unfortunately, it took 3 months for us to meet. And so that's kind of part of the timeline never got pushed back. But yeah, so that's part of that time crunch, that with staff and everything else. But so, I think it's recommended to get the feedback. We want to, try to get as much feedback as possible from the market rate community and the consulting community, and also the nonprofits as well. And I'm going to turn it over to Council Member Killingsworth, and she's
okay. Yeah, well, Audra does have her hand up. Audra, would you like to make a comment on that?
Yes, I will say that I'm sure, and this is it's coming from from me being on council since 2017. We want things done right. Okay, so if we need to move that date back, I'm sure this will be an okay thing for council. So as long as we're doing things right, that we're making sure that we're still gathering the information that we need and moving forward on making these right decisions, then we can talk about the date. So it's not a hard date.
Okay, that's good input. There was someone else that had a hand up. I forget who it was at this point, and the hand has been taken down. Are there any other comments or questions for CJ about this really good presentation? Thank you for the presentation, CJ.
Thank you. Whatever we can do to help. So.
Okay, I see Shannon Cox just put her hand up, and whether Shannon, do you want to chime in here?
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Phil. Just as a matter of process regarding the polling, would it be helpful, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Kane, if we prepared kind of a quick survey link for you to send to your membership, and that way we're getting consistent information and have a good way to capture that and prepare it for the next meeting? We have some tools that we could pretty quickly and easily provide that for you to share out.
I mean, maybe we could talk offline after the meeting. The most expeditious way to do that, I haven't really had a chance to wrap my head around the logistics of it yet. It was an idea that just occurred to me during this meeting.
Okay. Well, Paul, I think you know how to get a hold of Shannon, right?
I do.
Okay, and Jacob, that would include you as well. Are you okay?
Well, same way.
Okay, good. And I saw there was one other person with the hand up. I didn't see who it was, but
Phil, this is Audra again.
okay.
I would say that, the surveys that go out, Shannon and staff do a really great job at formulating the questions and being able to gather the information that we need. So I'd highly recommend, having that conversation quickly, but, I think they're a great resource for y'all.
Yeah, I would definitely agree from the aspect of the affordable housing plan and the public survey that was sent out. That was really well done. Okay, I know that we're running a little ahead of schedule, which is fine, but we do need to, and knowing that it was a little painful coming up with dates and times for our regular meetings, we have a task here to come up with some dates and meeting times for the special meetings. So I'm wondering if now would be a good time to look at that. Thank you, CJ. And I unfortunately have a conflict right off the bat with Thursday, February 17th. We're actually going to be, my wife and I are going to be traveling on that day. So my preference, and this may not make all of you happy, but my preference would be for the first meeting to be on Friday, February 18th. So are there any folks any board members that would have a serious problem with doing that?
I think, Friday afternoon meetings are the absolute worst.
I'm sorry, Jacob, I didn't hear that.
Friday afternoon meetings are the absolute worst.
Well, it could be morning.
Let me make a suggestion. This is actually a holiday weekend, that particular weekend. So I'm actually also going to be out of town. So I'm not available either Thursday or Friday. But my suggestion actually is to, and I know this is painful, but to do a doodle poll. Because I can guarantee you that for every date in February is going to be a conflict for me. It's going to be a matter of finding a time. And I have plenty of time. It's just that if you just start picking random dates, I'm probably going to have a conflict.
Yeah.
So I might suggest that create a doodle poll for us for these two special meetings.
Okay, so that's fine, and I'm okay with doing that for February because February is just about upon us. I'm wondering whether there's any chance of picking a date and time for March, or whether we want to do doodle polls for both the. And I see that CJ has actually moved us up to doing the first special meeting in March and the second one in April. You're a real man of faith, CJ. or you know Audra's influence on the town council very well.
What I was trying to say is these dates that I had up there were before we got the feedback from Councilmember Killingsworth that we can move it back now. So that's why I'm erasing those dates, because you.
Okay.
Yeah, we could push the dates back now to whatever you guys feel like. I mean, now that we know we have a softer deadline, so that, I mean, you don't have to go by what's on here. So we could send a doodle poll, definitely, and just do it that way.
I like the idea of a doodle poll.
Yeah, I think that'll save time. The only question is, do we just jump over February altogether and move to March? See, April 7th, as I recall, is our next meeting, our next regular meeting of this board. So that,
if we can find a date that works for the majority of everyone in February, that's fine. The dates on I remember the 18th February date was an all-day council retreat, so there was no way that was happening.
Okay. All right. So CJ, maybe the thing to do here is to coordinate with Tessa and figure out what would be, reasonable dates as far as Audra and Tina are concerned, and then put those in a doodle poll. And yeah, I see that. I think it's a good to kind of span across February and March for the first special meeting to pick that. And then I guess we want to do a poll. We're really looking for dates, and whether it's we need at least one date in February or March and at least one date in April, as I see it. And so can we do a kind of a overall doodle poll that covers all 3 months and leave out those dates that are not going to be good for people on existing town council and planning board? And that question is addressed to you, CJ.
Yeah, well, the staff will send out some proposed dates and times through the doodle poll, and we'll see how that plays out. So.
Okay, and I guess my only advice would be that we seek the cooperation of the board members to get back as quickly as possible, because things happen to people's calendars, and the quicker they can get them on their calendars, the better. Okay, I see Rhett has his hand up. Rhett, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I was actually just going to ask, I think this sort of goes back to part of my question before to Paul and Jacob, and that is 3 weeks enough for feedback, to get the sort of poll put together with council, with town staff? I'm only asking because putting out dates for our meetings, our special meetings, to me, it would be helpful if we had that feedback before we had discussions, because a lot of those items that are there, we're probably going to want to discuss. And if the feedback is negative, then that changes the discussion about what that, item might be. So that's kind of my question to you all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a fair question. And I guess that goes to CJ in terms of how soon would the input from the developers be needed? Would it be needed for the first special meeting?
I think we would like as much feedback as we can get from both the developers and the consultants that represent them and through the rezoning application, and also the nonprofit, the affordable housing providers as well.
Right.
We want to get this in front of as many stakeholders as possible. So I don't really have a a hard timeline to say, hey, that can happen in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. But, you know, at the same time.
Okay, so with that, I think what I'm hearing is that we probably don't have enough time to send out and get back that information before a meeting in February. Is that a fair statement, or is the 4 weeks in February enough for that? Because otherwise, then we're going to be looking at the last week in February, and yeah, like Tina said, maybe that's going to be difficult for more than just her.
If I could speak to that.
Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, 3 weeks would be incredibly ambitious. I mean, the building community is just amazingly busy right now, and I could send out an email saying, I'll give $1,000 to everybody who responds to this email, and I probably wouldn't get it done in 3 weeks. And added to that, the fact that we're a week and a half away from the International Builders Show in Orlando, and basically during that week, everything stops, and we've got over 130 companies from Wake County registered to go attend that event. So that disrupts their businesses, that disrupts what they give their attention to. With that wedged in the middle of that, I think 3 weeks would be very, very unlikely.
Okay, so let us do a doodle poll for March and for April. We already have a date in April that we established for the regular meeting. I don't know whether it would be appropriate to just turn that regular meeting into a special meeting, but I think that's one of the alternatives that has the potential to work. So how does that sound? And CJ, how quickly can you get the doodle poll out, I guess, or would you rely on other staff members in the planning department to do that?
No, we can do that in-house from the doodle poll. So I have a better time frame as to when to send proposed dates and times out now based on the feedback I received from the Housing Advisory Board. So, you know, staff will come up with some proposed dates and times, send it out to the board, and you'll have plenty of options to choose from, you know, so that way, you know, we don't feel rushed on anything. So.
Okay, so what I see coming up is that once, assuming all goes well and we get dates from the doodle polls from both March and April, then we originally were going to have a vote in this meeting. Can we, once we get dates that we like to and times that we like to propose to the board members, can we send that out by email and do an email vote back to just confirm that those are the 2 dates we're going to use for the special meetings?
Yes, you should be able to do electronic vote.
Okay, as long as we can do that, I think we're good. Otherwise, then we'll have a.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I believe that the rules of procedure indicate the chair and vice chair can call a special meeting. I just want to confirm that, because then once you have the doodle, it'll be up to the chair and vice chair.
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
Okay, but what I'm proposing is not as. Oh, I see what you're saying is once we have the dates and the times, then we don't need the whole board to vote. We just send out what the results are, and this is when we're going to meet.
Yes, and you can initiate and call for that date. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. All right, that sounds good. All right, well then that means that we don't have item number 5, as I see it, and we may be able to adjourn, but is there any other business that we need to consider, CJ?
No, that was it for the agenda for today.
Okay. Well, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Jacob Rogers, so moved.
All right. Thank you, Jacob.
I will second. This is Rhett.
Okay. Thank you, Rhett. Okay. Thanks, everyone, for, 2 hours is still a good chunk out of your day, and I really appreciate your making yourselves available, and I look forward to seeing when our next special meeting will be. Thank you very much, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.